Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Rich Clark, Guide to the Right Path. As I'm a hypnotherapist, but also a former holistic therapist the last 15 years, I'm talking about essential oils. I'm going to talk about heart and emotions, carrying on the series. And for today, I'm going to be talking about geranium. Now, you can see behind me, there's some geranium plants, and it's known for being an emotional and hormone balancer. Now, geranium is kind of an underrated essential, but it's got a lot of properties which are very useful. But I'm going to explain a few things about the process of geranium, how it works, why it works, and how useful it is. So first of all, geranium is just not one type of plant. There's actually 700 types of geranium, but only 10 can be used for essential. And it actually comes from the leaves, not the flowers, which is where most people get it wrong. So the idea of geraniums in your actual home or geraniums giving to people is actually the leaves where the properties actually are helpful, not the actual flower. And this does happen in a lot of different things we use. Like example, olives, actually, though they've got their health properties, the actual leaves actually have a higher thing, which is used in a tincture. So we have to sometimes understand this in health. So where do geraniums actually originate from? Well, they're actually a native of South Africa, of all places. Quite unusual. People didn't, mostly would never think of that. And it was introduced to Europe in the 17th century. But now, mostly, it grows in a place in China called the Reunion Islands and Egypt. And also, the other thing place it grows is Morocco. So, why does it grow in Morocco? Well, for the French perfume industry, Algeria, was known in 1947 to be where they were actually growing it. Then they moved the productions to Morocco. And then most of this was then they used this idea and exported it to China. It was part of a lot of deals, which, as I explained about in the Rose Wars, is that a lot of countries, when they started making money out of oils or actual fragrances and so forth, there was a lot of battles within this. And so, actually, a lot of things, what we don't understand and what we never talk about is actually the actual ethics behind essential oils and the ethics behind actual oils used for perfumery was actually based on a lot of the conquests of empires, the French Empire, the British Empire, and so forth. So it's actually quite interesting that the idea of perfume is seen as this luxury item, but it actually goes back into a lot of exploitation of different cultures to use it. And it's the same with foods as well. So anyway, to not go into that history so much, we're going to go into actually what the benefits of geranium oil is. So it's a balancing oil. It helps as a diuretic, and this is to eliminate excess water and reduce puffiness. Very useful for people who are older. This is mainly actually very useful for women and also dealing with emotional intake, but it's also good for people if they are pregnant and so forth as well, because they usually with water, you need to clear it out and so forth. Balancing emotions is to a calm, it helps to a calming and uplifting effect, and it makes it a natural antidepressant. So anybody who's going through issues of that, geranium actually, if you put it in diffusers, really helps. So you can actually put 5 drops of geranium and orange in a diffuser to ease anxiety. It's very useful for that. Other things geranium is good for, it reduces anxiety in children and adults alike. So if children have hyperactivity or ADHD or anything like that, if you actually put diffusers in a child's room of geranium, lavender does the same thing. Also, chamomile does as well. You have to be careful with some others because sometimes if children have high blood pressure for whatever for their diet or anything, you have to be careful with that other stuff. But that is sometimes good things is to have things like diffusers, or you get into like little remedies you can put on pressure points. And then there's a child, when they get a bit stressy, they can smell that. That's actually something I used to do as a kid. I used to have panic attacks because I used to panic and get over it. With me, I used to overthink as a child. So to me, I used to have these little drops I used to put on, and they were actually back remedies. And they used to be really helpful. So I'd sniff them, and that would calm my brain down. And then actually I learned. So I actually, essential oils is something I've had in different ways to help with myself. So also, geranium is known as a painkiller and it reduces neuralgia and shingles. So actually, with shingles, actually is coming up quite a lot in England at the moment with children because there's supposed to be an epidemic of that. You can actually use in an oil, and you can do this. Is actually you can put it to a tablespoon of bath oil. So, for example, you can actually put drops of geranium and lavender and put that in a bath, and that would help with shingles for children. Also, you can do that with a rubbing oil as well. But also, just make sure you'd have the drops of geranium would be a lot lower for children because children's hypersensitivity of their skin. Anyway, ideal to reduce dandruff, tones the skin, and reduces acne inflamed skin. So actually, geranium is very good for skincare. And most people don't use it for skincare, but it's actually one of the best things for reducing stress. So actually, for a lot of people, if you could actually, this would be an example, be a really good remedy, is you'd use geranium, rosemary, and lavender actually within a baby oil or for a mother. to use on her stomach, but also if, for example, if they're having stress when they've had the child, is to do that. That will actually reduce stresses down. The other things as well, it reduces wrinkles, scars, and blemishes, which again is useful for older people, but it's also useful for stretch marks and so forth. And the main thing what geranium is known for is its balancing properties. So it helps relieve menopausal symptoms such as hot flashes, vaginal dryness, plus soothes urinary tract infections. So really, if we're looking at some of the most essential oils for women who are going through the change or actually dealing with these things, these are the things I'd recommend is having lavender, rosemary, not sorry, rosemary, lavender, chamomile, tea tree for astringent, and then geranium. And if you had them, and then for an uplift, you'd use rose. So if you had for them five essential oils, that'd be useful for anybody in the house. So a remedy for actually to reduce cystitis and pruritus, which is actually something a lot of women get, is reducing that. You would have 5 drops of geranium and 1 drop of lavender to a tablespoon of bath oil. And if you do this in a bath, it'd be very useful. Now, if you also want to do that, you can put it in a flannel and reduce them levels down and then just use that in the vaginal area. It will help very much. So until next time, I shall speak to you soon and hopefully these will help.